remarkable engineering creations, but they're also some of the most dangerous man-made structures in case of failure. In today's video, we'll be looking at various dam failures and compiled 10 that were the most devastating in history. Number 10. Munay Dam Failure, Germany. Unlike the rest of the dams we're going to look at in this video, Munay didn't really fail, at least not because of a faulty design or too much rainfall, but we'll get to that in a few. Built between 1908 and 1913, the lake was formed by damming the Munay and Heavy rivers, probably one of the largest infrastructural undertakings at the time. And the results were quite magnificent. At the time of completion, Munay became the largest dam in Europe with a maximum capacity of 135 million cubic meters of water. Its main functions at the time of construction included regulating water levels in the Ruhr River, generating hydropower, and controlling floods. It was also considered an important part of Nazi Germany during World War II, which is one of the main reasons why it was targeted by the UK's Royal Air Force. On May 16, 1943, the dam was breached using specially designed bouncing bombs in what turned out to be one of the most important highlights of the war. The resultant flood killed 1,579 people and disrupted some very vital activities downstream. Most notably, about 400,000 tons of coal were lost, and thousands of acres of farmland were rendered unusable for the next few months. Number 9. Vajont Dam Failure, Italy. The idea for the Vajont Dam was first hatched in the 1920s, though it wasn't until the late 1950s when construction officially began. By 1960, the dam was completed and it stands 860 feet high, making it one of the tallest dams even to this day. About a year before its completion, the area around the dam started experiencing a series of landslides that persisted throughout the summer of 1960. As it turned out, the site was a poor choice for a dam. A quick study of the area found that the Montauk Mountain above the reservoir had absorbed a lot of water. Consequently, the mountain had become so unstable that 720 million tons of debris were slated to crash into the collected water. Of course, these discoveries sent authorities into a panic. To reduce the potential damage, they lowered the water level by over 70 feet, believing that in case of a landslide, the resulting wave would be contained by the dam. Unfortunately, the rock debris came crashing into the reservoir at least 3 times the expected speed, sending 2 huge waves to the opposite side of the dam. The locals hadn't been warned about this possibility, so they were caught unawares. Over 2,000 people lost their lives in the resultant mega tsunami, making this one of the worst man-made disasters in human history. Surprisingly, the dam itself remained largely intact. It was definitely a well-designed and well-built piece of infrastructure. The only problem is that it was built in the wrong place. Number 8. Puentes Dam Failure, Spain. The Puentes Dam disaster is one of the oldest events in this video and took place in 1802. Additionally, it has one of the highest death tolls, which is estimated at slightly over 600. The flood from the dam's failure also swept away a reported 1,800 houses, flattened 30 cloth factories, destroyed 9 mills, and uprooted over 41,000 trees. It's no surprise that the disaster remains the worst dam failure in Spain's history over 200 years later. But given the dam's scale, the adverse effects of its failure were to be expected. At the time, Puentes was the longest dam in the country, at a length of 286 meters. Built between 1785 and 1791, the dam was actually an improvement on the previous one that had collapsed in 1648. For the first few years after completion, the reservoir remained largely empty due to prolonged dry seasons. Things took a different turn in 1802 when heavy rains pummeled the area, filling the dam with too much water and subsequently causing its failure. Number 7. Panchit Dam Failure, India. Panchit is built across the Ambi River, a tributary of the Mutha River in Pune, Western India. And while it is an important part of the town's water system, its beginnings were less than glorious. In 1961, just a year after completion, the dam burst, consequently allowing a considerable amount of water into Pune. Massive destruction followed, as you'd expect, and close to 1,000 people lost their lives. According to media reports, the government seemed to initially cover up the dam's failure, which might have contributed to the large number of victims. By the time most of the residents figured out what happened, it was too late, although some were lucky to have enough time to seek refuge on rooftops. The failure was caused by what you can say were factors beyond the engineer's control. At the time of construction, there was a serious shortage of steel, so the construction workers had to make do with what was available: plain, unreinforced concrete blocks through the dam's conduit. These gave way easily as the water pressure mounted, which in turn pushed through the dam's earthen walls. Number 6. The Banqiao Dam failure, China. Banqiao Dam in Henan province was once fronted as one of the most outstanding engineering projects in the mid-20th century. It was christened the Iron Dam, perhaps as a reference to the amount of faith the Chinese people had in its strength. In short, Banqiao was thought to be unbreakable. A quick glance at the dam structure would have disproved this, but at the time, Chinese construction workers didn't have much expertise in dam construction. This had been outsourced to the Soviet Union, who focused on easing water shortages at the expense of flood prevention. In addition to this, Banqiao had way fewer and poorly designed sluice gates, which meant they'd underperform in case they were needed to drain a substantial amount of water from the dam. The hour of reckoning came in August 1975 when the region was hit by Typhoon Nina, unleashing a whole year's worth of rainfall in just 24 hours. The dam failed in what has come to be considered by some as the worst structural failure in history. Over 10 million people were affected by the ensuing flood, which has been termed as the third largest in the history of mankind. The Chinese government has never conclusively revealed the death toll, but estimates range from 26,000 to well over 240,000. Number 5. Kurenivka mudslide, Ukraine. Just like in the case of the Banqiao Dam failure, this Soviet Union-era disaster was kept under wraps. At the time, the government placed the number of fatalities at 145, while strictly forbidding any memorial events for those who perished. Details on the actual death toll remained sketchy until just recently in 2012, when a study suggested that as much as 1,500 could have lost their lives in the mudslide. The details of what transpired, on the other hand, have always been known. The tragedy was apparently triggered by the collapse of a dam at a brick factory near the infamous Babi Yar mass murder site. The failure unleashed a flood of sludge, water, mud, and even human remains into the streets of Kiev and the Kurenivka neighborhood. According to reports, the whole debris flow could have been around 4 meters deep. On top of covering up the actual death toll, Soviet troops were also sent out in a bid to eliminate as much evidence of the mudslide as possible. Seems like that didn't work out, since there's a great deal of info on what actually happened. Number 4. St. Francis Dam failure, USA. The 1928 failure of St. Francis Dam is another great example of what could go wrong when engineers ignore certain crucial aspects in their work. Self-taught engineer William Mulholland oversaw the whole project as the general manager of LA's Bureau of Waterworks and Supply. He had garnered acclaim a few years before this for the various successful projects he had worked on. While the project was completed just fine in 1926, Mulholland made some risky changes to the original design along the way, one of which was increasing the dam's height by 20 feet without widening the base. This inevitably placed the dam's walls under undue pressure, which, combined with seepage after construction, meant it was only a matter of time before tragedy struck. On March 12, 1928, the dam came down, 12 hours after Mulholland and his team had given it a safety approval. At least 432 people perished in the ensuing chaos, but the LA Times reckons the number was higher, given that the area had a considerable number of migrant workers. The tragedy effectively ended Mulholland's career, and even though he was never criminally charged, he took full responsibility for the dam's collapse. Number 3. Tigra Dam failure, India. Not much is known about Tigra's failure, especially the extent of the damage. But estimates of the resultant death toll are placed at 1,000, which shows just how devastating the disaster was. The dam itself was officially completed in 1917, 4 years after construction started. The aim here was to provide Gwalior, a major city around the area, with water for irrigation and general use. While a noble idea in itself, the engineers didn't seem to put much thought into the dam as a whole. Apparently, Tigra lacked any serious means of controlling seepage in its foundation, which is largely cited. Details about it, just send it over to us. We might even feature it in a future video. Number 2. South Fork Dam failure, USA. The South Fork Dam was constructed between 1838 and 1851 in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, as part of a series of development projects undertaken by the state. For some reason, though, the state of Pennsylvania abandoned the project, coming under several ownerships over the next few years. It was first sold to the Pennsylvania Railroad, who, again, sold it to an exclusive group of industrialists that consisted of Andrew Carnegie, among others. This gave birth to the equally exclusive South Fork Fishing fishing and hunting club with cottages and a clubhouse near the dam. By the time this was happening, the dam wasn't in very good shape. It was leaking and the previous owner had sold the drainage pipes for scrap. The club didn't seem too concerned with making worthwhile fixes. They simply patched the leaking areas with mud and straw, which in hindsight is not the smartest of ideas. On the last day of May in 1889, after a storm, the dam failed, letting out over 20 million tons of water. The failure swept away 2,209 lives and caused property damage of close to $17 million across several towns. Surprisingly, the dam owners were never held accountable for the disaster, mostly due to the legal one. Iruka Lake Dam Failure, Japan. Wrapping up our video is another 19th century entry which, unfortunately, has very little info about it. That being said, a few facts about the project aren't so hard to come by. The dam was built in 1632 and is among the largest man-made lakes in Japan, with a capacity of slightly over 15 million cubic meters. In 1868, over 200 years after completion, the dam collapsed following some particularly heavy rains. The damage spread to the cities of Katsugai, Tsushima, Yatomi, and Iwakura, with over 11,700 houses being flooded while 800 others were destroyed. The incident claimed 941 lives. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Like the video if you do and leave a comment. Also make sure to hit subscribe as well as the notification bell. That way, you'll get notified every time we upload new and amazing content just like this. Again, thanks for watching and see you on the next video.